originates it originates from precipitation. Precipitation means rainfall that gets into the ground from the surface to the water table. That means that there is a recharging of the rainwater happening in the region. Then groundwater occurs in the open spaces between silt, sand, and gravel particles, or in natural fractures in rocks, not underground rivers or lakes. Okay. So then underground, the groundwater moves from where the water table is high to where it is low. That means it can go along the gravity. So how fast it moves depends on aquifer, the permeability. I'll be discussing about the aquifer, permeability, and porosity, these concepts, as I progress further. And groundwater is susceptible to contamination from surface activities. The surface activities could be the discharging the wastewater without treatment, or industrial effluent, dumping the industrial effluent, or open defecation. These are all the activities that contaminate the groundwater. So now, when you look at the groundwater, as I said earlier, it is beneath the ground surface, filling pores in sediments and sedimentary rocks and fractures in other. That means this region, when you see the earth surface, you have a top soil. Then below that, you have the region which is the region filled with the sediments and rocks, etc. And it has the groundwater stored in between. That is the groundwater. And groundwater represents 0.6% of the hydrosphere, and it is resupplied by slow infiltration of precipitation. That means it takes a long time to recharge the groundwater. It is wholly cleaner than the general surface water. That means the groundwater, if we have not discharged any effluents or a wastewater, it is a most clean water, and it is accessed by wells. Okay. Now, let us try to understand what is porosity and permeability. The percentage of rock or sediment that consists of voids or opening, they refers to the porosity. That also gives a measurement of a rock's ability to hold water. Loose sand has 30 to 50% porosity, and compacted sandstone may have 10 to 20% of porosity. So the permeability is the capacity of a rock to transmit the fluid through the pores or the fractures, and interconnectedness of pore spaces. And most sandstones and conglomerates are porous and permeable. So now, when you look at the water cycle, the when you look at the hydrological or a water cycle, you know that it rains, we get the water, and part of the water goes underground, and part of the water goes to the ocean, and there is a process of evaporation and transpiration. Then, with the evaporation transpiration, there is a condensation and cloud formation, and with the cloud formation, then you have the precipitation back in the action. So that's how the cycle is complete. That's why we call this as a hydrological cycle or the water cycle. Now, when you look at the ground strata, you have the surface, the soil is there. The top soil is only the few centimeters, maybe the maximum is 15 to 20 centimeters. Then below that, you have the unsaturated zone filled with the rocks, then the open cavities and the soil. Then below that, we have a saturated zone which is filled with the rocks and the water. So now we understood the various strata in the underlying layer, and the water that gets infiltered gets filled in this region. Now let me show you through the animation this aspect. You see that as it rains, the water gets in, the infiltration happened and move towards the ocean, and there is a process of transpiration from the vegetation and process of evaporation from the water bodies. Then there is a condensation. As the transpiration happens, the solar energy is the driving force. With the reason, you see that the cooling of the water happen, leading to the cloud formation. Then again it is stopped, the cloud movement is stopped by the vegetation. With that, you have the rain happening in the region. So that's where the water cycle happens. Now let us look at this aspect in more detail. This is the video of USGS. You can see that how the solar energy drives the water. the water cycling in the system. So you see that with the the precipitation happening, you can see the process of evaporation and transpiration and the cloud formation. Then with the cloud formation, you see that the precipitation happens. So this is the okay, the process is completed. So now let's move to the next slide. So see the water table, the subsurface zone in which all rock opening are filled with water is the phreatic or a saturated zone. Top of the saturated zone is the water table. Above the water table is an unsaturated zone called a Vado zone. This refers to the Vado zone, and this is a saturated zone. And you see that when the vegetation, when precipitation happens, the water get infiltrated into this region. First, it get filled in the saturated zone, then it get filled in the Vado zone. Okay, and a first water table is above and separated from main water table by an unsaturated zone. That means there is a first water table which is separating these two zones. Okay, so now let us understand the some groundwater is important because 75% of us drink water from the groundwater sources. See, when you collect the water from the well or from the rivers, these are all the source of the groundwater. So lakes and the rivers are also there because during the monsoon you have the water because of the rain. The non-monsoon period you have the water mainly because of the water stored in the underlying layers that get the move towards the lake or a river. Now, when you look at the ground, the zones, you have the, as I said earlier, there are two zones are there, zone of aeration and zone of saturation. This is the groundwater zone and this is the Vado zone. And in this zone, you see the normally the water stored here, we refer it to the water table. When you are digging a well at home, you say that you got the water at 60 feet or a 400 feet. That means you have touched the water table the when you are digging the well. Okay, so now let's look at how much water we have. Do we have a lot of water to have a luxurious life? See, when you look at the total amount of water that is available on the earth, 97% is in the ocean, while the 3% is in the freshwater sources in the form of the groundwater and the lakes, rivers, etc. So that means we have only the 3% of the water, and in that 3%, major fraction, that is the 77% is captured in the ice caps and glaciers, and we have a very small portion that is available for the human consumption. This is across the globe. Okay, so now the repetition of what I said so far is that groundwater the water, the fresh water constitute about 3% of the total. 97% is stored in the ocean, and this water what is getting circulated is the one we are referring to, is the process of hydrological cycle, wherein you have precipitation, infiltration, then you have the groundwater recharge, and then the process is completed with the cycling. Okay, now let us try to understand the aquifers. Once water reaches the saturated zone, we call that as a groundwater. That means when we say that when the rainwater reaches this underlying layer, we call this as the groundwater. And if the geological material of this saturated zone is permeable and can yield water to a well in a sufficient quantity to supply user needs, it is referred to as an aquifer. That means, see, when we talk about aquifer, there are two kinds of aquifers. One is a confined aquifer and other one is an unconfined aquifer. Whereas the confined aquifer is the one where you cannot tap the water. The unconfined aquifer, you can dig a well and collect the water. Okay, now let us try to understand this concept in further. The aquifer, the saturated sediment or porous rock that is sufficiently permeable to supply the usable amounts of water. So that means when you dig a well, you are reaching the aquifer. That means if you have got the water, that means you have reached the aquifer. See, below this there are the confined aquifer is there. That's very that is a non-permeable membrane is there. So you are unable to tap that. What we tap normally is in the unconfined aquifer. Okay. So now the water table, the surface separating the Vado zone from the saturated zone. So now you understood that this is the Vado zone and this is the groundwater zone or a saturated zone. It measures using the water level in the well. Okay. Now as we understood so far, you have the various component. You have the vegetation in the catchment area. Then you have the unsaturated zone. This is also referred as the Vado zone. And this is a saturated zone or the groundwater zone. And the water that is stored during the monsoon in this region moves laterally. And that's how you have the water in the wells and in the rivers and the streams. And if you see, these regions are filled with the fractures that has the water, or with the gravels, and there are the spaces in between retaining the water in the region. Okay. Now let us try to understand how the groundwater flows. Usually people think that underground rivers, the groundwater does not flow in the underground river. That is wrong. Instead, groundwater exists within the saturated zone in pore spaces and travels by seepage or the percolation. How easily water travels underground is a function of the type of the sediment present. So that means the depends on the permeability. If it is gravel, it is a higher, then followed by the sand and the clay. So now let us understand the infiltration. When it rains, the precipitation soaking into the ground and moving into the surface. So that means the water, when it rains, the water moves downwards and vertically downwards, and it fills this subsurface, which is a saturated zone. Then you have groundwater recharge, the infiltration percolating to the water table. That means if it reaches the saturated zone, then we say that the groundwater recharge has happened. That is because of the infiltration. Okay. Then groundwater discharge. That means the water that is stored in this groundwater zone moving towards the river or the stream, there is the discharge. Natural location, including streams, springs, and wetlands, are connected by this way, have the groundwater recharge. Okay. Then, of course, you use the pumps to get the water through the wells. Okay. Then groundwater moves through the small pore spaces and from a higher water table to the lower water table. That means if you see that the region from the higher water table, it moves toward the lower water table. These are the regions of depression. That is where you see the river or stream. Okay. Now the groundwater flow consists of precipitation, infiltration, groundwater recharge, groundwater flow, and groundwater discharge through the spring, streams, and wells. This constitutes the entire thing is the groundwater mechanism. That means you have the rain and the water get infiltrated, and there is a recharge of the groundwater zone and the Vado zone, which I said that saturated and unsaturated zone. Then the water moves from the higher elevation to the lower elevation, and during the non-monsoon, the water that is stored in the groundwater zone and Vado zone move toward the river or stream. That's how you get the water during the non-monsoon in the river or stream. So now the same concept, groundwater flow from high to the low elevation, areas of higher elevation or the recharge areas. Now you see that you would have seen the hillock, etc., and the river. So now this is the region of the groundwater recharge, and groundwater flows from the higher elevation and then it moves towards the lower elevation. That is normally ends in a river or a stream. Now the groundwater flows towards and discharges to rivers, lakes, wetlands, springs, or wells. So that's what in this diagram, groundwater discharges to a well and a stream. So you see the well where the water is extracted, then the groundwater gets filled in that region, and then you can get the water. Similarly, in the case of rivers, during the non-monsoon, the water moves towards the river or a stream. That's how you have the water during the non-monsoon in river or stream. Suppose if you have not allowed the infiltration to happen in the underlying layer, then you will not have the river or stream having the water. Then you will see drying of riverbed or the streams. Okay. Now that is where if you look at the concept of the wells and lakes came into the ancestral time. If you see that wherever the wells are there or the lakes are there, it is a common meeting place for the local residents. And there are some of the examples of how the rainwater being used through the wells for the societal requirements like irrigation, the drinking, etc. These are some of the good example of the step wells throughout the country, including Karnataka. The Karnataka state, I am from Karnataka state. Okay. Now, when you look at the water that is available, let us look at the budget of water. Okay. India, see, India's geographical area is about 2.45% of the entire the globe, and we have about 4% of the world's freshwater resources, and that has to cater to the 18% of the world population. So then water availability, you have the total precipitation, which is about 4,000 billion cubic meter. Then you have, after the losses, etc., you have 1,869 billion cubic meter, and the total utilizable water is about 1,123. Out of that, groundwater is 433 and surface water is 690 billion cubic meter. Even in the cities like Bangalore, the 45% of the population, they gets the water directly from the borewell. The remaining 60% or the 55% gets it from the river Kaveri. Of course, river Kaveri also gets the water from the groundwater sources during the non-monsoon. Okay. Now, when you look at this, the river network in the country, because I know that the kids from Delhi, Haryana, Rajasthan are listening to me. These are the rivers that are there in the zone. If you look at the rainfall pattern, you can see that average the country receives about 1,170 millimeter of rainfall, and the maximum is 11,000, that is in Meghalaya, and the minimum is in 100 millimeter, that is in the western Rajasthan. So, but there is an uneven the pattern of rainfall. That is where the scarcity of water also happens in the region. So now, when you look at the per capita water availability, with the time there is a reduction in the water availability. What you saw in 1959, 51, you had 1,000, the 5,177 the cubic meter the per year the water available, but now it is about 1,140 cubic meter per person per year the water is available. That is in the you can say we are closer to 2025. We are in between 1,820 to 1,341. That means there's a decline in the quantity of water available. That is where we need to learn and understand from where we get the water and how to manage the efficiently. For example, the Karnataka, some part of Karnataka and Kerala receive the rainfall as high as 4,500 millimeter. But because of the mismanagement, we see there is a drought situation during some period in a year. Whereas Rajasthan receives a maximum 400 millimeter rainfall. The way the water is managed in the efficiently in the Rajasthan, we don't see such a water scarcity despite having a lower rainfall, etc. That means the management of water decides the availability of the water. That is where we need to understand how to manage the water, how to maintain the integrity, etc. Okay. Now, we have the regions with the floods. That's what you see. The some parts of the India are prone to the flood, and also there are parts of India which are always prone to the droughts. Say Deccan Plateau, you see that there is a prone to the drought situation also. About 22% or 23% of the India is prone to the the flooding, the drought situation in the country. Okay. And now when you look at the groundwater, I said that we depend on the groundwater to a maximum extent. Now, when you look at the quantity of groundwater that is being available, you see there are some of the region, there's a scarcity of the groundwater. This is the data of 2011. You can see that there is a groundwater development in the percentages is given in this table. So now these are the regions where the groundwater exploitation is happening. The heavy extraction of groundwater, especially for irrigation, the groundwater levels in many districts have fallen by more than 4 meters during 1981 to 2000. And these are the regions you can see that our groundwater table is depleting in the region. Okay, excess withdrawal causes the ingress of the saline water, etc. Okay. Now, if you need more detail, these are the website you can visit. Some of the material what I presented just now are from this website. You can have a look at it so that you get an idea. Now, I'll take an example of the India so that you will understand that what are the impacts to the groundwater and how to manage the groundwater. Now, as I said earlier, the water, whether it's a surface water or groundwater, get polluted through the urban runoff or the agriculture runoff and from industrial discharge, and if you untreated sewage entering the water bodies. If you go to Delhi, Yamuna is being fed with the sewage, or if you go to Uttar Pradesh, you will see that Ganga is regularly fed with the untreated sewage and industrial effluent. So now, of course, there are moves to they decontaminate the Ganga. So I hope in your lifetime you will see a cleaner Ganga. Okay. Now, when you look at the drinking water in India, you would have seen the most part of the rural India are dependent on the groundwater sources, and for drinking, etc. They use this is a common scene you would have seen in the rural India. In urban area, you would have seen through the bore wells, etc. So then another important thing is the sanitation. It shows that about the data what we have, that India continues to be a country with a higher number of people, that is about 638 million people, or approximately 60% of the world data practicing the open defecation. See, when people do the open defecation, naturally the contaminants get into the underground water. That is how the underground sources gets the contaminated. One of the thing you can bring awareness among the people, because the states you come from, I have noticed there are open defecation happens. That is, you should discourage them doing the open defecation, the irrespective of the age group, the younger or the elderly people, you should discourage them. Then the second thing is, if there is a the law the discharge of the untreated sewage is getting into the river or the other water bodies, you should make sure that city administration or a municipality have the treatment plant. See, about 10 years back, Bangalore was in a similar situation without much treatment happening. But today, Bangalore has the largest number of the treatment plant. That is because we went on the pressurizing the government to go for the treatment of the sewage and industrial effluents. So now this gives the level of nitrate and fluoride contamination in the sun. These are the region where you see the higher levels of nitrate. As you all know, the groundwater will have nitrate when we have the irrigation and when we have the the fertilizer used, which has the nitrogen content. When we use that in the large scale, naturally that seeps into the groundwater sources, and when the N gets into the underground sources, it gets converted into nitrate. Nitrate is a carcinogen, which means it introduces cancer in the system. So that means if you look at some of the parts, the people are inherently prone to the cancerous the disease. This is where the fluoride contamination is prevalent in the region. You know that the deformation of the teeth, the leg, etc., are the symptoms of the fluoride contamination. So now the nitrate also comes from the agriculture source and also from the sewage, etc. While the fluoride is it could be the naturally occurring and in the geological strata. So now let us look at the linkage between the surface water body and the groundwater. See, when we have lake, we had seen the groundwater in the at about 100 or 200 feet. When the lake was removed after 5 years, in the same region, we noticed the groundwater table going down to 600 feet. From 80 to 100 feet, that was when lake was there, we were getting water at 80 to 100 feet. This is in Bangalore. And that shows that there is a link between the lake to the groundwater sources. And when the lake was removed, then the groundwater table dipped to 600 feet. In some other location in Bangalore where intense urbanization has happened, groundwater table has gone down to 800 to 1000 feet in 2005. And today the water table has gone down to 1900 feet and there are no water. So when there are no water, you know that there are conflict, there will be conflict, there are the distress in the system. So now based on the availability of groundwater or the content of groundwater or the scarcity, the region is mapped as the grey block, dark block, or a overexploited block. This is a typical example in Bangalore district. See, Ramnagaram and Doddaballapur are grey block. Dark block are Bangalore and Channapatna, and overexploited block. That means we have gone very deep and there's no chance of getting the groundwater. So that is in the regions of Anekal, Devanhalli, Hoskote, etc. Okay. Now, you know that part of the Bangalore also gets the Kaveri water. If you look at from 2003, there is a shortfall of water. At one end, groundwater is depleting. Another end, there is not enough water because of the degradation in the catchment, etc. So that's where we need to learn to manage the water system. So now let us try to understand how to manage the water bodies in India, and And today, now I will discuss about what is that management, how to do that management. This some of you can practice it. So now the next part of my talk, the agenda is to ensure clean and adequate water for all. See, as a human being, if you ensure that fellow the human being have the clean and adequate water, then that means you have done your job. Okay, then I will take you to Western Ghat. This is the region where we do the studies. So we'll understand the linkages of the water, the forest, and the other activities. Then I will bring you to the Bangalore and show what is happening in Bangalore and how we can solve the other thing through the some live example. I will demonstrate that. Okay. So now let me go to the Western Ghats. As you all know, Western Ghats is in the western part of India, the peninsular India. It starts from Kerala, goes up to the Gujarat. It is a backbone for the Deccan Peninsular India. So now you see that the length of this the Western Ghats is about 1,600 kilometer. This is a hill range, the chain of hills, undulating terrain. And if you look at this Western Ghat, constitute only 5% of India's geographical area. See, when we talk about conservation of the forest or the water body, we are not asking the government to conserve everything in India. We are just asking the Western Ghats, Himalaya, Aravalli Hills in Rajasthan, like that. These are ecologically sensitive region. Why they are ecologically important? Because if you look at the Western Ghat, there are 100 plus rivers are there. Because of this river, the people get the water throughout the year. That means the water security and the food security is provided by these the riverine ecosystems that are there in the Western Ghat. That is where we need to conserve this ecologically the vital ecosystems in the Western Ghats. Now let's look at the diversity of life. You know, you all know about biodiversity. Biodiversity refers to the diversity of biological organism, diversity of plants, diversity of animals. You would have seen mango, you would have seen banana and such fruit. There are various species of banana that also talks about genetic diversity. And also you have ecosystem diversity. You have the forest ecosystem. Within that you have evergreen forest, deciduous forest, scrub land, etc. So now let us look at how many species that we have in a Western Ghats. See, if you look at the in the literatures, you know the earlier scriptures talks about the having the about the 12 lakh the or 1.2 million species on the earth, and science has predicted about 1.3 the the lakhs of the species on the earth. There is a lot more work to be done to identify the species and also understand their medicinal properties. Now, when you look at the Western Ghats, as I said earlier, the Western Ghat extends from Kerala to Gujarat. So now from 8-degree latitude to 22-degree latitude. Now, when you look at the number of species that occur in the region, at 8 to 14-degree latitude, you have the highest number of species. Higher the number of the species means you have diversity of plants and animals. Why do you need diversity of plants and animals? Diverse plants and animals gives you the diverse food and diverse medicines. Each plant and animal have some medicinal properties. That is where you need to conserve this ecosystem to get this diverse medicine and diverse food. That is the importance of the thing. Now, when you look at this, you see that highest number of species you saw that happens in the Kerala and Karnataka part of the Western Ghats. Now, if you have to manage this ecosystem, what is the strategy? We have a simple tip, that is the ecosystem approach. What does that ecosystem approach means? Let us not alter the physical integrity of the system or a chemical integrity. What is this chemical integrity? That means let us not pollute the water bodies or the forest, etc. Let us not dump the waste in the reserve. Let us manage the waste efficiently so that we can convert the waste to the well. Similarly, the physical integrity means we will not do the deforestation. We will not alter the shape of the lake. We will not change the channels. These are the things, you know, the river channels, etc. That is the refers to the physical integrity. If you are maintaining the physical and chemical integrity, then you are sure of the biological integrity. That means the species that occur in that region will continue to occur. If you alter the physical and chemical integrity, then we will lose those species. then maintaining the ecosystem towards maintaining the physical and chemical integrity is called the ecosystem approach. That is the management strategy one should have in the country and in the globe. Now, let me take you to the Western Ghats. This is a dense forest. This is the kind of the region we work, myself, my team work, and this is a region which is rich in water and repository of biodiversity. Now, let us try to understand the role of the diversity of plants. Now, when you look at this, you see the cross section gives the river or a stream, this one, and this is the catchment area. Catchment area is the region which drains the water to a particular river or a stream or a lake. Now, during the monsoon, see when it rains, there is a precipitation. See, in the forest, you would have seen the diverse plants. Because of the diversity of plant, the roots of the plants are also diverse. Because the roots are diverse, the soil microorganism are also diverse. You all know that soil microorganism have a decisive role in making the soil the porous or a permeable. When it makes the soil porous or permeable, that means it will allow the water to percolate. So that is where if you have the vegetation which are of native species, it allows the water to percolate. So it fills this zone which we call it as saturated zone. Then after saturation zone, you have the Vado zone, which is filled with the rocks and cavities and the zone. So now it fills the Vado zone. Then after saturation of these zones, you will see a water flowing in a stream or a river. So now when you remove this forest and convert it into a building, then there is no percolation of water happens. So now see, we have put the sensors in the underlying layer to understand how much water flows the vertically downwards there during the monsoon. In Karnataka, we receive rainfall for 4 months. Because of that, we have water for 4 months. Then after 4 months, the water that is stored in the Vado zone moves laterally towards to the river or stream. That's how you have water for the next 4 months. Then during summer, the water that is stored in this region comes to the river or stream or a well that we call it as a base flow. That's how you have the water for 4 months. That means 4 months because of the rain, 4 months because of the water deposited in this region because of infiltration, and the 4 months because the water they deposited in saturated zone. So you have the another 4 months water. So that means the 12 months of water is available. Now, when you convert this catchment into the paved surfaces with the building, etc., there is no infiltration happens. In absence of infiltration, you have the water only during the monsoon, and most of the water, since it flows on the catchment, there are flooding happen. That is what you would have noticed in a regions like Mumbai, Bangalore, and all. Floods happen because of too much of concretization that has happened in the region. So now, as the students, as a youngsters, young ambassadors, what is your role? So your role is to convince the decision maker that there is a need to maintain the physical integrity and chemical integrity of the system. And when we maintain the forest in the catchment area, it helps in the groundwater recharge. That groundwater is the water that we all use. Getting a clean and the adequate water is the fundamental right of everyone, including you people. So that means you are asserting your right by demanding the government that minimum the forest cover to be maintained in the country. Okay. Now, let us try to understand this linkage, what I explained earlier. See, I explained here when the forest is there, what happens, and when forest is not there, what happens. See, this is a good example. You would see there is a water here. You don't see the water here. This change has happened over a last 3 decades. That means in 1990, when I was a student, when I was traveling in the region, I used to see a plenty of water. But now today, when I go to the same region, I don't see the water. That could be because of the absence of the vegetation in the region. So that establishes there is a link between the vegetation and the water. If you want water, you need to maintain the vegetation in Aravalli Hills and Western Ghats and Himalaya. If we degrade this ecologically sensitive region, the country is going to pay heavy price. You can get anything, but you cannot create the water. So now let us try to understand this concept better. I'll take you to river basin. I will explain you how this forest help in the recharging the groundwater. And if the forests are there, if the hillock has the forest, then now it helps. If the forests are removed, what happens? The river basin, it becomes a dry. So now let us try to understand this concept better. I will explain you how this forest help in the recharging the groundwater and if the forests are there, if the hillock has the forest, then now it helps. If the forests are removed, what happens? what happens to the groundwater recharge, we'll try to understand. This is a river, Sharavati River in the Western Ghats. Okay, see, when the catchment area is covered with the forest or the agricultural land or the plantation, their ecological functions also varies. The catchment area containing the forest, the hydrological, ecological and nutrient cyclings are different from when it is a degraded landscape or the agricultural land, the landscape. Now let us try to understand this with an example. I'll take you to a river basin. This is a Sharavati River Basin in Karnataka. It originates in at Ambutirtha in Shivamogga district, traverses 128 kilometers, joins the ocean. So now when you look at this river, it has got a stream network. This is also a catchment area for this river. The catchment area is the region. It is also referred as a watershed area or a basin. In America, it is used a term used as a basin. That is the region which drains the water to the river or the lake. Now, when you look at this river, the blue line is a river. This maroon color is the stream network. You will see on one portion, stream network is very dense, and other side stream network is the sparse. About 100 years back, both sides had a similar stream network density. Okay. Now, what is the change we have done? We constructed a dam here. When we constructed a dam, the mistake what we did is, see, there were villagers were practicing the cultivation. They were forcefully evicted from this region. They were they are located in the drier belt in Karnataka. The farmers who were practicing wet cultivation, they couldn't survive in the region where they located. So then what did the farmers do? Those villagers, they waited this dam construction to be completed. They came to this part of the river basin. They occupied, they encroached the forest, converted forest into agricultural land. Now, when you look at this carefully, you see the density of streams is poor here, whereas the density of stream is higher. Now, if you want to understand the implication of this kind of activity, whether let us start with the rainfall. Now, today you have 120 years of rainfall data. That means from 1990 onwards to today, we have the 1900 onwards to today, you have the rainfall data. That means 120 years rainfall data is available. That means every day's rainfall data is available in the government records. Now, let us take that rainfall data, analyze that into two time period, 1901 to 1965, 1965 to today. It is like if you are in the 10th standard, how you were there till 5th standard, first standard to 5th, and 5th onwards, how you are. So similar analysis we did with reference to this region to see that how rainfall has changed from the earlier time to today. See, the dam was constructed in 1965. That's where let us divide this data into two time period, 1901 to 1965, 1965 to today. When you look at the data of 1901 to 1965, the entire region was receiving the rainfall of 3000 to 4500 millimeter. But today's data, if you look at 1965 to 2020, you see that this portion continued to receive the rainfall of 3000 to 4500, while this portion started getting the rainfall of 1700 to 1900 millimeter. See, the rainfall pattern is same. The terrain is undulating. In spite of that, there is a change in the rainfall pattern. What could be the reason? Let us look at the land cover in the region. You all would have taken photograph of yourself when you are in the first standard, when you are in the second standard, and now. When you take the photograph of yourself, you can see what changes are happening in the system, whether how much you have grown, what are the facial changes are happening. Similarly, when you take a picture of the earth, you can do the change analysis. That's what we have done. See, we have launched the satellites way back in 70s. From 1970 onwards, every 21 or 30 days interval, satellites gives us the photograph or the picture of the earth. Now we have the picture of this river basin, Sharavati River Basin, for this region. This is a catchment area for Linganmakki Reservoir. Now let us look at the land cover or a picture of the corresponding to this region. You see, where our stream network is thick, rainfall is higher, and that region still has a forest cover. So now wherever the rainfall has declined, you see the region is dominated by the barren or degraded area or the agricultural land. Okay, now this establishes that there is a link between the forest and rainfall in the region. Now, to understand this, what we will do is let us divide this region into subbasin. How do we divide this into subbasin? See, you have first order stream, two first order stream join and form second order, then form the tributary. Let us delineate a subbasin for a tributary. There is one tributary here. Like this, there are tributaries on this side and there are tributaries on the eastern side. This is the western side. You can see this polygon indicate the subbasin for each other. Let us find out what is the forest cover and the rainfall in each of these subbasins. So now I'll take you to the subbasins. These are the subbasins on the eastern side. These are subbasins on the western side. Eastern side is this side, western side is this side. Eastern side is dominated by agriculture and degraded area, while the western side is dominated by the forest. Okay, now let us see in this subbasin, forest cover is 30%, rainfall is 1076, or the 41% rainfall is 1750. While on the western side, forest cover is 65%, rainfall is 4800, or the 60% rainfall is 4400. So now this shows that wherever forests are there, you have higher rainfall. Now, another aspect we try to look at is the how long this water is available in the stream. Do we get the water in the wells and stream throughout the year? I talked about the groundwater recharge. That concept we are demonstrating now. See, now what we have done is this is a one portion looks like this with the vegetation, other portion is degraded. Okay. Now, see, we chose 1 month stream. We monitored the stream to find out how much water is there, how many months the water is available. If water is available all 12 months, we graded that stream or well as A. If the water is available for 8 months, we graded it as B. If water is available for 6 months, we graded it as C. And if it is available only for 4 months, it is D. Like you get A, B, C, D in your courses, the similar grading we have done. Now let's look at where the A type of streams are there. That means the streams and wells carry water 12 months when the catchment area has the forest of native species. Okay, the more than 60%, then you have water in your wells and rivers 12 months. When we degrade the catchment and convert into monoculture plantation of rubber or acacia eucalyptus, then you have water for 8 to 6 months. Then when we decline the forest to a less than 30%, then you have water only during monsoon, that is the 4 month, that is D type of this one. Here in this region there are D type of streams. Here you have A and B type of streams are there. A means 12 months water is available. B means that is a 6 to 8 months is available. Now see, when you look at this water availability, see the water is used for irrigation, water is used for the domestic purpose for drinking, etc. We quantified how much water is available in a region for agriculture, etc. At the same time, we looked at how much water is deposited in the underlying layer. This is a infiltration and this is evapotranspiration. You see, wherever forests are there, this is a region where forests are there. Here the forests are degraded. Wherever forests are there, infiltration is much higher than the evapotranspiration. Here you see evapotranspiration is higher because there is no forest, everything is exposed to the sun. That's where evaporation happens. Like when you go out on a sunny day, you feel thirsty. Similarly, the landscape also demand for water, that is through the evapotranspiration. Now you see wherever forests are there, there is a sufficient amount of water is available to meet the societal demand of the agriculture, the domestic water requirement, horticulture, etc. Wherever forests are degraded, you see the demand is much higher than the water availability. That's where there is a scarcity of water happens. Now for this to happen, there is a infiltration has happened in the catchment. Infiltration can happen only when there is a vegetation cover in the catchment. Okay, now this is, you see that this is a region where you get the water 12 months. This is a region 8 months. This is 6 months and 4 months here. Now see, wherever forests are there, the streams and wells had a water for 12 months. Wherever forests are converted into monoculture plantation or degraded, you have 6 to 8 months. Where forests are degraded less than 30% forest cover, you have only 4 months of water availability. Now you see that how you have water ranging from 4 to the 12 months. See, having 12 months water is the water the surplus situation where the having the water only for 4 months shows the scarcity of the resources. This is mainly because the water that is infiltrated, you get it during the non-monsoon period of 4 months from the Vado zone, and during the summer, the water stored in saturated zone comes to the this one. That's where you should understand the hydrological cycle, the role of groundwater recharge. Groundwater recharge happens efficiently when the region is covered with a native species vegetation. It allows the water to percolate. Because of the diversity of plant, the soil is porous, and the porous soil allow the water to percolate. So then you have depositing of water in the underlying layer. This water get moves laterally. That is where you have water during the non-monsoon period. 4 months because of the rain, 4 months because the water stored in this region, and 4 months the water stored in this region. You have 12 months water in the region because of the groundwater recharge happening because of the infiltration. Infiltration can happen only if there is a vegetation cover on the in the landscape. It is something similar to you have hair on your head. See, the people who have hair on the head, if you put a cup of water, it takes some time to flow down. Whereas if a person doesn't have a hair, if you put a water, whatever the water is put on the head, immediately the flows towards the down. So that clearly shows that the you similar to the hair, you need to have the vegetation in the catchment. Okay. Now this is the various kinds of the animals that are there in the region. See, this is the Sharavati river basin. The sloth, bear, gaur, tiger, these are the various symbols. They all are there where water is there for 4 months, for 12 months, where water is not there. Where the water scarcity is there, only two-legged animal occurs, that is in this region. This shows the relationship between the occurrence of the four-legged animal with the water availability versus the absence of animal in the region where the water scarcity is there. Okay. So now we have published this in a current science. Those who are interested can go through this article that is available online at the in this journal Current Science. Okay. Last May 2020 we published this article. Okay. Now let us try to understand how these are important. Okay. If the water is there 12 months, what is the use of that? See, if the water is available 12 months, you will have the fish, the resource available. Now we identified these two new species of fish. This has a medicinal property. It is used for respiratory diseases. Now, as you all know, the fish that has its own habitat in this river basin. Now, this has a medicinal property. Now, if the fish has to have medicinal property, it has to grow in that location only. You cannot bring to your hometown and culture it in your lab or this one. So then it loses a medicinal property. That means if people want medicine in the form of the fish, they need to make sure that fish survives in its habitat. The fish can survive in its habitat only if there is a water for 12 months. The water can be there in the river or stream for 12 months only when its catchment area has a native species of vegetation. That means because of native species of vegetation in the catchment area, the fish has got the medicinal property. This highlights the linkage between the catchment area integrity with the medicinal properties of the fish or the water. Now, if the water is not available, what happens? You all know about frogs. Frogs, we call them as the amphibians. Okay, amphibians are they have two stages in the life cycle. First stage is a juvenile stage or a younger one that requires the water. The second stage is adult stage that is on the land. Because of these two stages in the life cycle, we call frogs as amphibian. Now, if the water is not there, what will happen to the frog? See, then the tadpole stage cannot happen. So then the frogs will die. So, but in our study, what we noticed is the particular species of frog, the this particular species, Philatus leucorinus, it has bypassed the tadpole stage itself. See, here, after fertilization of the egg, the next stage is the tadpole stage. That is on the 14th day, the tadpole emerges out of in 8 or 9 days, the tadpole emerges out of the thing the fertilized egg. We noticed that younger ones are started coming out of the fertilized egg in a 14 days. This is very important from evolutionary point of view And this is very important for you to understand that with the warming of the earth, with the global warming, the changes in climate is happening. With the changes in climate, water scarcity is bound to happen on the earth. When there is a water scarcity on the earth, none of the human species will survive on the earth. It is only these organisms will survive. See, this animal has shown us how to get adapted to a situation when there's a water scarcity by bypassing the tadpole stage. Okay. Now let us look at the how we can solve the issue. One is the first and foremost thing is a rainwater harvesting. So you can see your friends are talking to you and giving the message of the rainwater harvesting. Okay. So now let us try to understand the importance of the rainwater harvesting. The through a case of Bangalore. You all know the Bangalore is the capital of Karnataka. It is in the southern part of India. Okay, the Bangalore's geographical area is 740 square kilometer. If you look at in 1973 in Bangalore landscape, we had greenery of 68%. That means 68% the vegetation was covering the Bangalore landscape. Only 7.97% is red. The red are the building. The blue is the water body. Yellow is the open space or agricultural land. You see 92, with the industrialization, we started losing the vegetation. And today, 2021, if you see, 85% is covered with the concrete area. You see only the buildings, and we have the vegetation less than the 3%. You know, for any region to survive, it should have at least 33% green cover. When 33% green cover is there, that region will have adequate oxygen. Now, for your information, see, you all are breathing. I am also breathing. When we breathe, we give out a carbon dioxide to an extent of 540 to 980 grams per person per day. You all are giving out 980 grams of carbon dioxide, while I am giving out 540 grams per person per day. Okay. Now that is depends on the age. Now 1 hectare of tree takes away the carbon dioxide to an extent of 6 to 8 the tons of carbon. That means by that ratio, for every human being, there should have been 7 to 8 trees. But what we have noticed in Bangalore, this one we have the for every 7% one tree. That means the reverse situation we notice. What is required for a region to have adequate oxygen is that 7 to 8 trees. When we have that much tree cover, the groundwater recharge also happens, and also the lakes will have the water, which also allow the groundwater recharge. Okay. Now in 2025, 98% of Bangalore would be concretized. That's where some of us have started telling enough is enough. Let us not congest the Bangalore. There has been a 1055% increase in built up area during 1973 to 2019. We lost 88% vegetation, 79% of the water bodies. Okay. The situation in Bangalore is we have the inadequate oxygen and water scarcity in the region, and also there are instances of cancer and kidney failure in the region. You know, the water bodies are polluted. People grow the vegetable in the downstream using this water. And also when the water bodies are polluted, surrounding groundwater is also polluted with the heavy metals. You know, when heavy metal get into our food chain, see, we analyze this vegetable that is grown in the downstream, and also the borewell water sample, and also the milk sample and fish sample. All of them had heavy metals. You know, because of that, there are higher instances of kidney failure and cancer in the city. So now kidney failure, which was 1 in 1 lakh about the the 15 years back, today it is 1 in 20,000. So the number of kidney failures have increased in the city because of the mismanagement of the water resources by polluting the water resources. Okay. So that's where we should be very careful in not polluting the water sources or the groundwater resources. Okay. So now you understood the Western Ghats, the linkages. Okay. So this is the kind of vegetation cover that is changing in the Western Ghats. Okay. Now, when you look at the Western Ghats, there is a changes in climate is also happening. The number of rainy days is decreasing. See, if the rainfall is spread across 40 to 50 days, there won't be flood happens. But now the same amount of water rainfall falls in a shorter duration. Because of that, flooding happens and landslides, etc. happen. And also there is an increase in temperature in the region. That's what our study brings out. That means changes in climate is happening, and we are going to pay the heavy price with our mismanagement of the ecosystems. Okay. So that is the the highlights of the study, and you understood the linkages in the ecosystem. See, as long as the humans are not there, there is always nature is in a balance. You can learn many things from the nature. You can see the energy transfer, optimization, etc. Okay. So the message here is you need to have ecosystem approach in managing the earth resources and water resources. Okay. Now, if you don't do it, what is the thing? Let us learn from the history. See, the Easter Island, people went on expanding the island. But because of scarcity of water, people have to vacate the island. The island had died because of the water scarcity. The similar thing happened in the last leg of Vijayanagara kingdom in India. You know, this portion of the Vijayanagara kingdom, ruled by Vijayanagara kings, were the face the water crisis. With that, there was the unrest among the people and led to the downfall of the kingdom. So now, the recently you all have faced the COVID. COVID is also a good example of the mismanagement, consequence of the mismanagement of the ecosystem. You know that virus has originated in the wild resources, so it has come to the human habitation. With that, you saw that the entire globe was shut because of the COVID-19. Okay, that means we need to establish the bond between the nature and humans. Let us respect Mother Nature so that we will have healthy and enough resources. Okay, now what are the solution? Let us try to understand. So this is a food chain. You see that when you understand the food chain clearly, you will never do the mistake in your life. See, when you look at the food chain, see the producers are producing food using the solar energy, which is eaten by the consumers, and whatever is left in the system is converted into elemental form by the biodegraders or the bioengineers. That's where in an ecosystem, there's nothing called waste. See, you will see waste where waste people are there. Who are these waste people? People using too much of plastic, synthetic material, they constitute the waste because those synthetic materials are not assimilated by the nature. So that will continue to remain as a waste in the system. It creates a burden in the system. So now you understood how the waste can be minimized in a region. Okay. Now at home, if you want to reduce the water footprint, the best thing is you have a healthy diet. As a youngsters, as a students, you should have a healthy diet. The best way is to have more and more pulses of protein in your food. When you have pulses, it helps in weight management. That means you will not be obese. It helps in optimal brain functioning. It is a good source of vitamins and minerals, and it also lowers the diabetes and blood pressure. So when people start using more and more pulses, we need to grow the pulses. So let us see how much water is required for growing pulses. So the pulses like tur dal or green dal, etc., require 200 liter per kg of pulses, whereas the rice or a wheat require 3,000 to 5,000 liters of water. So while the beef requires about 15,000 liters. Now, another advantage of growing pulses is the pulse crops are not eaten by the animals. So in villages where the wild animal problems are there, if you grow pulses instead of rice or the sugar cane, then you know that you can also minimize the human animal conflict, because the animals don't come to the village because they do not get the food. So that way you can address the human animal conflict. At the same time, you can also reduce the footprint, the water footprint of your the region. So now, what are the things one can do it? This can be done throughout the country. If we do it, probably we are solving the water problem in the country. One is, let us do the wastewater treatment. The best technology is the constructed wetland with the algal pond. This is what we did in 2008 in a place called Jakkur. We have a lake. Surrounding that lake, there were 25 wells were there. The Jakkur lake was fed with the raw sewage. That means untreated sewage was coming to this lake. And because of this, the surrounding bore wells had the nitrate. As I said earlier, nitrate is a carcinogen which introduces a cancer. The nitrogen is a Sarajanaka. Okay. Now, what we have done is we have integrated constructed wetland and algal pond so that the sewage, when it passes through that, the treatment of the sewage happens. That means these plants will take away that Sarajanaka and Ranjak, and then the water will not get polluted with the N and P. Since the water N and P is not there, you do not see the nitrate contamination in the bore wells. Today, there are 300 plus bore wells. None of them have the contaminants of N and P. So this report is available online. Those who are interested can go through this detailed thing. You will also get the data. So we are of monitoring this wetland for the last 10 years. This is the work what we have done, which has given the clean water to the people in this locality. Okay. Now rainwater harvesting is another option. You can rejuvenate the lake through the constructed wetland. So see the Bangalore, if you look at, we receives about 700 to 850 millimeter rainfall, which is equal to 15.3 TMC. This is 1000 million cubic feet. Okay. The Bangalore requires about 18 TMC. That means 70% of the water required for Bangalore is available in the form of rain. So now to harvest the rainwater, there are two options. One is the rooftop harvesting. You would have seen in your buildings, which will give 4 to 5 months water. The another best option is through the lakes. See, if you look at Bangalore, we have interconnected lake. If we rejuvenate the lake, we can have the water stored in this, so that groundwater will not be polluted. So we have interconnected this one in the 3 watersheds of Bangalore. So there are 193 water bodies in 198 wards. That means we have adequate number of the lakes to store the water of 15 TMC. Now the solution here is, I have a 5R formula. First R is the responsible citizen. When people are responsible, okay, they will rejuvenate the lake so that I can retain the rainwater, which is about 15 TMC. They will also allow the reuse or recycle of the rainwater. So that means the entire food chain is created by the nature. See, when you look at the you have 31 TMC of water in a region where the water requirement is 18 TMC. That means we have a water surplus situation. This is what Jal Shakti Ministry has to implement it. As ambassador, you should convey this message to your water minister at the in the state, in your respective state, and also in the center. I know that Kejriwal is there in the Delhi. You should convey to him so that he can make less noise and work towards the welfare of the people through the water rejuvenation and wastewater treatment, etc. Similar situation in Rajasthan and Haryana, you can do that. Okay. Now, if you look at Karnataka has about 40,000 lakes. If we do the similar thing, there won't be water scarcity in the state. Okay. Now, option 3 is create water bodies and mini forest in each ward or village to get adequate water and oxygen. I have demonstrated that vegetation, if it is there, it allows the water to percolate and fill the groundwater source. So that's where you need to have mini forest. Okay. And create water bodies. This is what the water body I have created in the campus of Indian Institute of Science. See, my campus is about 400 acres. In a campus, we have a water body which stores 10 lakh liters of water. You know, my student use this for doing the biofuel research. At the same time, we have animals like this in the water body. You know, at one end, I said Bangalore is dying. Other end, I am showing the pleasant picture of ISC campus with the animals like otter. You know, otter requires a lot of fish. They feed a lot of fish. So we looked at there's some kind of biodiversity in the region. See, you can see 2005, I am taking a measurement here. 2008, the various year, the lake looked like this. This is the algae in the water body. This is zooplankton. This is the fish, and this is the, the, the birds in the sun. That means the entire food chain is created by the nature. Of our job of filling the water has created the ecosystem. So that is the greatest work you can do. Millions of organisms you can give a life by creating the water body. If you are from a village, please make sure your elders create a water body and maintain the water body so that you will have an ecosystem like this. See that today we have otter and variety of snakes in this region. Okay. And when we meet people, we make sure they create the water body. We give the technical backup. See, you see the youths from engineering college have taken part in creating a water body in this region. Similarly, they say from Alva Science and Engineering College, CEO is there. The next year, the water body was created in his campus based on our advice, 25 lakh liters of water. So when I look at the success of this program, it is because of the youth. When you are young, you will think positively. When you think positively, you will take up the work which help the benefit the society and the humankind. So they took up the large scale planting of the in the catchment area. So when I visited in 2018, you can see me standing with my student. You can see a smile on her face because of the greenery and water in the region. Then when I visited 2019, you can see that water body has a plenty of water. Okay. Now the mini forest in each ward, I'll take another 3 or 4 minutes. It improves the groundwater table. improves the local ecology, helps in carbon sequestration, and also reduces the temperature at least by 2 degrees centigrade. See, for that, you should come to IISc campus. I have created a mini forest in the campus. Okay. If you come to campus, you will see this climber. I was fascinated by the architecture of the climber way back in 90s. I got this to Bangalore and planted in the campus. See, this is the seed I got of this plant. I planted these 7 seeds in 7 locations. Out of 7 locations, only 1 location it has survived next to the building where I've been working for the last 2 decades or last 20 years. Okay, that shows that plants also keep eye on who takes care. In front of this building, we created a mini forest in a 2 hectare area of 49 native species. That means 500 sapling we planted way back in 90s when I was a student. See, now if you look at the region, you get a feel of the rainforest, and this gives the glimpse of the sun. And also you can see your friend here, the slender lories also. There are 4 families of slender lories in this forest. Okay, so, and more importantly, this region way back in 90s was dominated by Parthenium, that is a wheat. Today you see you greenery of native forest. So if you look at the groundwater in the 90s, groundwater in this region was 150 feet. Today I have the water at 5 to 10 feet. That shows that there is a link between the forest and the groundwater resources. Okay, and the temperature in this region is another 2 degree lower, and it has a variety of snakes, birds, etc. That means even the biodiversity is a thing, including the slender lories, and this gives a glimpse of that the mini forest in the region. Okay, now when you come to the campus, you will get a glimpse of all these things. As you all know, I am from Indian Institute of Science. We are number one in the country. We are number one because of our student doing a good job. If you do very well in your studies, you also will have an opportunity to do the higher studies, like you can do the BSc, bachelor's program, or the master's or PhD at IISc. When you do the higher studies at the institution like IISc or IIT, your career profile also goes up by many folds. Okay, so now we also sensitize the youth. These are the various activities we do. That we organize a symposium once in 2 years, popularly known as Lake Symposium. This is a 4-day event. 1 day is exclusively for the school kids. They can attend all 4 days, and they can do the presentation. The school kids do the small experiment of your age group. They do the carbon sequestration, and they do the catchment mapping, the water quality assessment. They are trained in Bangalore. I have a network of about 42 institutions in Karnataka taking part in this event. So the children go to the field, collect the sample, they come to our lab, analyze the sample. These are sketches drawn by the kids. They understand what is the food chain, what is the aquatic food chain and terrestrial food chain, etc. And today we are working on the biofuel aspect from the algae. See the work what we did in 2009 or 10, we mapped the solar potential of the country. Today solar program of the country was based on this work. And now my students are working on biofuel to provide the liquid fuel so that you can run your vehicles, etc. So that today when I look at the country, we have 65% of the population are young, the youth. We have abundant solar energy and we have biofuel. So you can have electricity, you can have fuel. So if we can harvest this, we can make country the self-sustained country or a developed country, And also we do the capacity building for the people working in industries, etc. This is a glimpse of the 18th session of the course on environmental management. If you need more detail, these are the website you can access, and you can write to me at this email ID. So if you access this website, you will get the details of my presentation. The videos are also available there, and also my publications, all the PDFs are available. You are most welcome to download the PDF. You can go through it, you can read, but do not copy and paste and submit an assignment to your teachers. So because your teachers also know me very well, they know my writings. Okay, these are the various themes we have worked on. So you can see that related to wetland, water bodies, the ecosystem, etc. we have worked on. Okay, there are about 20 plus youngsters are working with me. When they do a good job, as youngsters keep a smile on everybody's face, that's what happens with everyone. Thank you very much for listening to me. So I was told that I can talk up to 4:15. Now it is 4:15. You are most welcome to ask questions. So I maintain the time also, though we started 5 minutes late. I maintain the time. Okay, maintaining the time is also equally important in your life. Okay, thank you all.
Very, very thank you, sir. It was a very, very informative presentation, and I'm sure students learned a lot. I learned a lot along with them, and your research at the Western Ghats is very, very fascinating. I would love to read about it more, so I'll definitely do that. I would like the students to ask questions from sir if you have any doubts, if you want to know more, please do ask, and you can even switch on your videos. Let's see your pretty smile as well.
Okay, I will stop sharing so that I can see them properly. Yes, Ananya.
Very good afternoon, sir. So first of all, thank you so much for such an insightful session. I mean, all of the experiments and everything was so fascinating. So right now, all of us had this question that since right now our students are all restricted to online meetings and online discussions. So what as students can we do to contribute virtually that can actually make an impact in the real world?
See, one is the knowledge dissemination. Now, whatever the knowledge you have gained, am I audible to you? Ananya, you can hear?
Yes, sir, we can.
Yeah. See, whatever the knowledge you have gained, now today it has its relevance in a Jala Shakti ministry. What you should do is, though you are in a virtual mode, you can send an email highlighting this kind of studies to the decision makers, because the decision makers of today hardly read scientific literatures. Now you can put it in a very simple language. You can write to the Jala Shakti minister. You know, the Shekhawat is there in the central government. You can write to him and say that what should be the path taken to be taken by the Jala Shakti ministry to sustain the water, because they have a very ambitious program called Jal Nal program. That means a tap in every house. For tap to be in every house, there should be a water. For water to be there, one should manage the ecosystem properly. That's what I highlighted the thing. Essence of my talk, you should carry forward to the decision makers of today, including Prime Minister Modi. I was told that the Prime Minister is quite receptive to the young brains. So you should take advantage of that. You should write to the all the central government, the son, and also the state government. The state government, respective state government also have good ministers. You can write to them. And most of them are literate. That means they can read and write. So they should be able to understand your simple the writing. So I would like to see in the next Mann Ki Baat your mail to the Prime Minister, so that Prime Minister should tell that how he got an idea from a youngster about the water sustainability, what kind of management country should have. Okay.
Surely, sir. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Yeah. Hello, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, Karthik. Yeah.
Sir, first of all, I was held in awe by your research and everything you told us about Western Ghats and all. Sir, so currently as MCOP delegates, my team and my group, we are working on wetlands. We're actually as a part of MCOP, we're determining how to help wetlands. So can you give us a bit more elaboration on wetlands, on how we can do work to protect them, especially online? Because we have ideas, but we would really love your insight on that, sir.
I missed your voice for a while. Can you repeat what is your question? Can you speak a bit louder?
Yeah, sure, sir. Am I audible now, sir?
Yeah, you are audible.
Sir, my team and I, we are working on a wetland project, and as Group 1A, our goal is to conserve wetlands. And now we have decided to take steps to do that. But now since we're online, we would really love your insights on how we can improve and how we can contribute to wetland conservation. So that is my question, sir.
One is there should not be any external input to the wetland. Okay. If you want to have water in the wetland, then the catchment area of the wetland should have the green cover. That means that you need to identify the catchment area for the wetland and make sure there are native species in the catchment area. The second thing is No untreated sewage or industrial effluent should enter the lake or the wetland without treatment. Okay, that means you should make sure that treatment plants are put in the place. There are the very simple technologies are there based on constructed wetland, which I demonstrated that you can adopt. Third thing, you should make sure that local participants are the stakeholder in the management. When they have a sense of belonging, there won't be any mismanagement. You know that today's youngsters should have the sense of belonging toward the country, toward the parent. Then we will have a very safe or secured country. You know, exactly same thing happens. All the stakeholders in the region should be a partner in the management, and regular, the awareness program about if there are any mismanagement, you should have that. If you look at, there are writings on Bangalore lakes which we have made through the students in Bangalore. We have motivated the children so that if there are any mismanagement, they alert the administration, and also they go on, in case the administration is not listening, they go on agitation, not to shout, but they will have the black badge on their mouth. They will do the silent procession, and that catches the media. Then immediately we see things start happening. When a child feels that wetland belongs to his or her, no, nobody can pollute the thing. Nobody will pollute it. That is where the children are the best. The way to manage the ecosystem. I would say you all have a youth club in your school, and see that your school owns that wetland, and have a regular monitoring of the wetland, so that you will understand how changes are happening in the wetland as well as in the catchment area. I hope I have addressed all your queries.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. All the best, Karthik.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, Shivam. Yes.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for such a great session. It was very informative to listen to you. My question, I am from the group 1B, and my question is, what policy or law changes can we expect from the RWAs for conservation of groundwater? Because now as we are moving towards the building of smart cities, the roads are getting built and the trains are not getting the trains are being covered. So how will the water percolate inside? Because earlier we used to have a system where the water could percolate easily, but now it's not happening. So what demands or what requests can we make to the local governments?
See, one other thing you should make sure is as we did in Bangalore, no, concretizing the drains. When you concretize the drain, as you rightly said, there won't be groundwater recharge. First and foremost thing is we need to advise or tell the government that these are hydrological entities. The drain should never be made the paved surface. You should carry the water so that it will recharge the groundwater. Okay, that's the first more thing. Second thing is, what I have noticed, Shivam, is that the environmental literacy among the people is very minimal. The literacy is there. People can read and write, but environmental literacy is very poor. Wherever environmental literacy is poor, we see this kind of mistakes happening. Okay, so that is where what you have to suggest the government is that there should be the regional planning, wherein you have to make sure 33% is green cover in the catchment area of the lake or the water body and in the region, so that you can have adequate oxygen as well as adequate groundwater recharge also will happen with the maintaining the thing. That is what we have to insist for that. When we have that the 33% green cover, everyone will have clean air, clean water. That is what the Article 21 talks about. The clean air and water to all of us, to you. Okay. So that is what we have to emphasize. That is where we should ask the government why they are diluting the 33% green cover, why the regions are becoming degraded with without a green cover. Okay, that's another thing. As a youngster, you can write a mail to the decision makers, the state as well as the center. Okay. Okay. So you are from Rajasthan?
Yes, sir.
Your name is Namita.
Yes, sir, Namita.
But earlier I saw some other name. That's where I named you as a Shivam. But okay.
No, I think you must have begun and I interrupted.
Actually, sir, I was raising my hand, so probably my name flashed ahead.
Oh, okay, okay. That's okay. Let me finish with Namita, then I'll come to
Sure,
you.
sure,
Shivam.
ma'am. Sure, sir.
Yeah, Namita, you have any other son? Shall I move to the next person?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. I was in Rajasthan day for yesterday. Okay. Okay, thank you. So, Shivam, you can.
Yeah, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Your presentation taught me so much. I didn't know really about groundwater, so that was a very insightful experience. Thank
See,
you so much for
Shivam,
providing
I
me
have
for
taken
that.
25 years to understand. You are lucky. At your age, you got all the information. So you could be a better person in India now.
Sir, we hope to be that, sir. And you will be the
Okay.
first person to tell us, sir.
Sure. Good. That
So,
confidence I like.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, I had this doubt. It's just a simple question. I just want to ask that one very simple act which we can do every day, or this one simple thing which we can do every day, no matter we are children or we are adults, just as citizens, which we can do, which will actually help us save groundwater. That one simple thing we can do when we wake up in the morning.
You know, Shivam, when you wake up, first and foremost thing is respect mother at home. Then you will respect Mother Earth. When you respect Mother Earth, no, there won't be any filtrages of water or the waste generation, the thing. You become very conscious of the thing. You know, the one other thing, if you can concentrate on the waste minimization, you know, natural resources, the wastage of your time, you know, as a youngster, your time is precious. If you are spending more time on the junk gadgets like mobile, then I would say you are doing a mistake in your life. So that is where we have to minimize the wastage in our life so that we can be a productive, we can give something to the society. When you give something to society, you feel satisfied. You know, today my group feels satisfied because we have been giving to the society what the society wants in terms of technology, in terms of the clean water, etc. If you can do it, then there won't be a poverty in the country. So the message here to you is respect your mother at home and respect Mother Earth and minimize the waste and learn the optimization so that you can minimize the waste. Okay, efficiency and optimization go hand in hand. You should learn those concepts. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Shivam.
Do we have any other question from anyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Shreya, please go.
Shreya?
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good
So-
evening, Shreya.
So my question was,
Where
how
is your
can,
video? I can't see you.
so actually, I don't know. I guess there is some technical issues due to which my camera is not on.
No
I'm
problem.
so sorry for that.
I can hear
Sir,
you. Okay, no problem.
So my question was, sir, how can we include activities in the extracurriculum syllabus in schools and at the same time motivate students and gain their interest in activities for our groundwater level projects or basically any environmental project that we hold? Because when it comes to environment, even when we have projects, even when we have activity, the problem that arises is the lack of interest of student, and that is something that bothers a lot of program. So what are things that we as an individual or we as in students can do to like prevent that situation?
See, actually, what you said is true. If you spend more time in the classroom, in between four walls, naturally that kind of frustrations happens. What I suggest is to take up the experiments like I have done with the kids in Karnataka. You know, you should adopt a lake near to your school, do the regular monitoring of the water quality, the catchment mapping, to find out how much green cover is there in the catchment, and if there are any the waste that is entering the lake like sewage or the industrial effluent, you should alert the sun As a youngster, you can do this kind of work like Bangalore students are doing. In one of the rural schools, we have succeeded in pointing out those anomalies in the system. And today, those two big lakes in Bangalore are being rejuvenated. The credit should go to that school children who fought for that. They regularly monitored, they told the government that lake is polluted. And the NGT took the case. NGT is a National Green Tribunal, and they told the government to rejuvenate the lake, and now the lakes is being rejuvenated. I am also in the committee. So now the message here is the water bodies and green spaces near your school, you should adapt. The school should adapt, and it should be used as an open the laboratory for the student to learn the concepts of carbon sequestration, water quality assessment, soil quality, the bird watching, understand the biodiversity. All this aspect the children can do. When children take up that kind of field oriented thing, they learn the subject, they understand the subject better than the mugging in the classroom. So where in the classroom they can just sit, do copy paste, whereas if they do it through the field oriented experiment, then they will understand the concept. I would say the youngsters should do that. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Shreya?
Yes, sir. Sir, just one query that now today's generation is so much into social media. How can we take social media as a platform for plans, or what are the chances or scope that social media can provide us in um, spreading those awareness and catching interest of students, especially in this situation where we all are locked in our house?
Shreya, I would say that till you attain some destination in your career, you should refrain yourself from the social media. Social media could be plus or negative. The way the social media is being mismanaged or misused or abused by the current generation, I would say the youngsters like you can refrain from the thing, or else you should have a forum wherein you can take this kind of messages and discuss about it, so that like-minded people can tag to you and can have the thing. For your information, I am not on any social network, and for your information, I don't even use the mobile also. So that's why I have a lot of time to spend with villagers, and I can do the society relevant work. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir.
Sure.
Rishabh here.
Yes, Rishabh.
Indeed, a very nice information, sir, that it's good to be with humans rather with mobiles and technology.
You are not audible. Can you speak a bit louder?
Am I now audible, sir?
Not very good.
Now, how is that?
Okay, seems okay. Let us see. If I have a problem, I'll ask you to repeat.
Yes, sir. So nothing, sir. It's good that you said like it's good to be with people offline than being with them in online. So, sir, as you said, we must inspire most of the students. Like some feel like environment conservation is a dull topic, very boring topic. Now, we being nature enthusiasts, we love to conserve it, but many of them do not. So what can we do to inspire them? Like as you said, the people, students in Bangalore just did some silent protest against the government to just clean up the river. It's good, sir. But are there chances for threat for the students?
Can you say the last part? What did you say? Can you repeat?
So you say students should protest. It's good, sir. But as you said, silence protest is the best way, best option for us. But isn't there any chances for threat for the students?
See, actually, what I meant is I didn't want you to become an activist. When you do the experiments, you will have the knowledge. Once you have the knowledge, you can convince the decision makers. See, even the students in the Bangalore, they didn't go on agitation mode. They just wearing the black badge. They just protested when the government was not listening. Because of that, the Supreme Court listened to the students. That today the lake is being rejuvenated. That is the contribution by those youngsters to the society in the city. The same thing can happen to you also. Your school, you can listen. You said that environmental science is a boring thing. Probably the teacher who is teaching environmental science is not doing a good job. See, when I speak, sometimes I get an audience of 40 to 50,000 also. If it is a boring, then why people will follow me? Okay. See, it depends on how you teach, and how the youngsters get assimilate the thing. If the subject is taught as a business as usual, like for the sake of doing, then what you said is true. We should motivate the youngsters. Environmental science is the one subject which integrate all the subjects. You know, the mathematics, biology, physics, chemistry, everything is integrated in that. If you understand the essence of it, then you can do practice your career in a better way.
Okay, sir, last doubt, sir. So, okay, sir, it's good that we can just motivate the students. So, we must ignite their mind. What if we make environmental science as a mandatory subject in schools, and we just aware the people about the importance of environment?
This is exactly should happen. Though there is it's a Supreme Court has said it is mandatory in the school, but it is not taught properly. What
Yes, sir.
you should do
In
is,
many of the
Rishabh,
schools, it's this as a course, sir. It's not like
yeah.
a mandatory subject.
No. What you should do is you should write to the Prime Minister and Education Minister and say that in NEP, this should be made mandatory. You know, because that current education minister is quite young and receptive. I'm sure he will listen to your suggestion. You should say why it is to be made mandatory. What are the advantages when the student take up the subject? How the country gets a benefit because of that. Okay. If you highlight that, I'm sure the both Prime Minister as well as the Education Minister will respond to you, and things will work in the towards that. Okay. We should do that. Okay.
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
Chetna, ma'am, just a request, ma'am. Although our group is focusing on groundwater, what is in just the Prime Minister or the government bodies?
Yes, I think
Yes.
that yes, sure you can do that, but focus on groundwater first. I think
Sure,
Sir
ma'am.
also said that the groundwater is an issue, and when children and youth write letters and put their word forward to the government, it's when they listen. And we have seen that being in an environment education sector, we know the power of the voice that the youth have, and MCOP is the platform where we want to bring the voice of the youth to the government, and we want to tell them the right way for advocacy, not not just the activism way. So we definitely will look into the environment education sector where we can write a letter. We will reach out to you, but that would be offline. Do work on your on underground water situation
Sure.
very hard, because that's something that's not like you didn't know, I also didn't know, right? And that's a situation that hundreds and thousands, lakhs of people don't know. They don't realize because it's the hidden water, as they call it. So I think, is there any last questions, or else we will thank sir for his very valuable time. And sir, thank you so much for taking out time for our students, telling them about the issue, telling them about the research and the solutions they can follow. I think it was a very inspiring session. If any of the students want to do a closing remarks or anything, that would be lovely. Yeah. Ananya, would you like to? Yeah.
Again, I would just like to reiterate the point that thank you so much, sir. We're all very grateful. And it was a very fruitful session. I mean, the experiments were very fascinating. And one of my major takeaways from the session would be to integrate more and more experiments in what are the projects that I'm going to be doing next up related to environment. So thank you so much for this fruitful session. And I really loved the ecosystem approach. I mean, it's so fruitful, and so it incorporates everything. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, all the best to all of you. I hope you all do some. You will be the game changer in the system. Okay, I would like to see changes happening because of you people. Okay.
Yes, and definitely, sir. Thank you, and we will send you a quick report after what the students have done in 2 months as well, and I'll personally share it with you so that from
Sure,
your
sure.
inspiration and your thoughts, what they have learned and acted upon. So thank you very much, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay,
Thank you, sir.
all the best. Okay,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
sure.
Thank you, sir.
So So we'll end the session now. We will connect children offline with you and we'll do a quick group meeting and we'll discuss on the next action plans as well
Sure,
now.
no problem.
Okay, sir. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
bye-bye.
We'll connect with you. Thank you. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope you had a
Ma'am, we
good
would
time.
like to give you some inputs, ma'am. Like we have just planned for the profiles, we have just planned for social media accounts. We have created posters and some PDF has been created by Ananya.
Oh, great.
Oh,
That's fantastic.
yeah, we have just started a group of 5 of them are active now. So
Okay.
now we have just called and included the Puducherry girl as well because like the Puducherry twin was done. But
Okay.
the other 5, Tamil Nadu is from me and Shivam from Delhi and Ananya from Manya as well. Haranya is Haryana. Both of them they are equally important. And in Rajasthan it's Namita and then DR it's Shreya. So 6 of us are working on the plan.
Okay. Okay. So,
Just wanted to inform you on the Puducherry side. So I had a word with Priyadarshini. Earlier, they were saying that both the delegates would be joining, but I don't know, some technical glitch. Priyadarshini was again and again being kicked out of the meeting, even in the previous meeting that we had before this one. And probably they had some exams, so they were busy with that. So,
okay.
I mean, that's what the information that I could get on my side from there.
Okay, so what I'll do, I'll speak to the teacher of the Puducherry team offline and just understand what the issue they are facing and why are they not able to be more active in the group. All right, at least one of them should be active with you and work towards you because we know that Puducherry faces a very bad underground water issue also, and it is important that all the states and the union territories work in this group. Okay. Do you have any other questions or doubts that you want to take? I think only the group members are here right now. Yeah.